Welcome back to Hot Rod Guy Garage. This is going to be another episode on the 65 Mustang. I got Daisy with me here on the floor. So follow me through the intro and I'll be back. So guys, it's been a few days since we got the epoxy primer back on the body again. And it's mostly dried out real good. Don't really see anything that I really need to go back and address as far as that goes. But, as most of y'all noticed in the video, these fenders were quite the mess. Now keep in mind, I didn't body work them. I stripped paint off of them. I sprayed one thin coat of epoxy on them to seal them. So now we need to get them mounted back on the car. So we start trying to body work them. Because they are very rough, and unfortunately, you're probably going to have more money in it than you could have buying new ones. He didn't want to go that route, so here we are. So I ordered the master bolt kit from AMK. I'm going to flip it around, I'll show you that. It's super nice stuff. And absolutely needed on this car because, you know, all the bolts that were cross-threaded and messed up in it. So let me flip the camera around. You excited for a new Mustang video? So this is what I ordered right here. Pretty nice little set. They didn't give me this or sponsor me in any way. He's definitely paying for them. But all this stuff is pre-labeled. This is literally every bolt for every exterior part of the car. And it's super high quality stuff with the correct finishes. Like this black oxide coating. And you know, zinc coatings or cadmium coatings, however was needed. But super nice stuff. A few of you may have noticed I got these fenders stuck on here. I just literally got these bolts stuck through the holes where I can hang these up there and get them out of the way. So now we need to mount them appropriately so I can get them fitted to the car, you know, because they're just hung on there and they're quite the atrocity. But we're definitely going to have to do some work up here in this area for sure. Now both fenders are physically bent down right here in this area right here. So that's going to have to be addressed. Hopefully once they're on the car I can get in there between the cowl and the fender and work this up. But on a side note, I did order a radio patch panel so we can get rid of Mr. Crooked hole there in the dash. So guys, it's super important anytime you paint a car like this or go this far into a car that you mock up every single piece of it before you paint it. Like the fenders, I knew they were going to have to go back on and be body worked. But you need to put things in like your tail lights, your rear valance panel, your quarter extensions. You need to make sure all this stuff is fitted. And once I get the fenders body worked, I will mock up the headlight housings and the headlight bezels. Because it's good practice and you don't want to end up with this stuff not fitting after you paint it. Because there's no going back in, there's no going back and doing body work unless you're going to strip it all back down and start from the beginning. So I've got the quarter extensions kind of mocked up back there until that's roughly mocked up. And there is some fit work we're going to have to do to the rear half of the quarters. I expected that. And some fitment work we're going to have to do to the quarter extensions. It's just a mess back there. And it was from the beginning with everything being out of square and crooked. And it's still a mess. So one thing I do know is the base of our quarters are straight. I just got to fit everything to everything else, and that may include doing some partial body work in the rear half of the quarters again. Not a huge deal, but like I said, you want all this stuff to fit up nice. That way when you paint the car, it don't look like a horrible hacked up mess like this thing did before. And when I say fit up, I mean stuff like this. And some of this is the pot metal on the quarter extension. This is the quarter extension off the 66 out there. His actually fit worse I got the tail light stuck in it. As you can see, we kind of taper down towards the trunk right there, and that's going to have to be addressed. But the passenger side fits pretty decent. Driver side is going to need some work, but it's just part of it, guys. It's things you have to do to make things fit, and you know, just like me welding that piece of rod on the back of this fender, it turns into a big old giant mess. And also, if anybody's curious, I don't know if this is a repop quarter extension or what. This thing fit like absolute garbage. Also noticed that unlike the one on 66, this one's, I'll get the rubber seal. It's very, very thin. And even though it says Ford and you got a Ford part number, you got to kind of watch that with these repops nowadays. Looks factory, but I don't know if it necessarily is. But they had done some grinding before in here and broken some tabs off to make them kind of fit before. It was just easier for me to take them off 66 to see if it fit better, and it did. But there's still some fitment issues there. But there definitely is a huge difference between this 65 fender extension, or the one that was on the car, and the ones off the 66. And maybe after a while I'll pull them off and I'll show you the comparison between them. But the 66 one is twice as thick in these areas. Twice as thick, which means they'll be easier to fit. Whether I have to take some material off of them or add material to them in places, it will help a ton it being a thicker piece. But in the meantime, let's try to get these fenders bolted on the car. I'm going to start with the driver's side one because it fits the best out of both of them. We knew these fenders were a train wreck from the get-go. If y'all remember, I completely avoided messing with them for this reason. So here we are. Let's get these things bolted on here. And another helpful tip, guys, whether it's paint or primer, take you some 2-inch tape like this right here and run it along your door edge. It ain't got to be perfect, but it will just help you not bang and scratch everything up that you worked hard to mess with. And as long as you run it tight enough, it won't interfere with your door gaps. Well, that's what Daisy's saying. She said I done it wrong. But just good practice. Even if we're at this stage on the doors and stuff, it's final blocking. I don't want to knock any of that primer off while I'm adjusting on these fenders. So I got the fender bolts. So this will be enough to do both fenders. Should be all the fasteners and everything we need, with appropriate clips and pads as needed. So what I'm going to go in here, I'll just split everything out in groups. As needed. And then we can split it up in half. And I'm doing this on top of the fender with nothing on it because it don't matter at this point because it's not done body work. So pretty nice little spread of stuff. let me get this stuff installed. Well, I got all the fasteners on there. Some of you notice I didn't do anything to the bottom side of the fender. That's because I'm going to clean those afterwards, and I'll come in here and bed line them. But right now, I got all our fasteners in, all our clips installed. So we should be ready to start trying to put this fender on and try to get it lined up. So I've been working along. I've got the fender bolted up. Sometimes you may have to go in here like these cowl A-pillar brackets, and you may have to slot these slightly, depending on your needs. That way you can adjust the fender height. What I was running into is I was bolting this up trying to adjust it. I couldn't get the body line quite right. It's almost there. So just a little touch with the die grinder here will correct where that hole is stamped in the wrong place on the fender. It's something you have to do sometimes. A lot of you may be wondering how I'm going to fix this mismatch here. Well, unfortunately, about the only way I can twist this fender right here is to use a big old long pry bar and try to relax this fender back up into space. Of course, I'm going to lose some paint around that edge of that windshield frame, but it's a super thick piece of metal and won't hurt to pry on it. But these fenders had a pucker here anyway, and they've got tons of dents in them. So I can go back in here later and touch this up. But that lets me correct most of the mismatch there. And it makes it easier to do the bending and flexing around because these are the cheapest Taiwanese fenders that they made. They're super thin. They're not going to be great after Bodywork them. I mean, they'll be straight, but if you lean on this thing with your elbows, you're going to leave dents in it. You lean up against it, you're going to leave creases in it. You're going to leave, waves and nastiness. But he wants to fix them, so that's what I'm doing. So I'll flip it around. I'll show you where I'm at. I got it to line up pretty decent. That's about all I'm shooting for with the gaps on this car is pretty decent. Keep in mind, like I said from the beginning, it's going to be a driver quality car, which will be a show car to him. So it's not going to be 100% perfect, but it will be a very nice car in the end. So as you can see, got the body lines pretty close there. Got the cowl line pretty decent here. Round through the back side, round through here. It's pretty decent. It's going to take a little work in this area, and a little work in this area here. But unfortunately, the gap does run a little wider up towards the top, and I could fix that, but it's going to take multiple hours to get that addressed. But it looks pretty decent considering what I started with. And it may take a little more flexing around and twisting on things, but I think I've got the fender roughly mocked up enough that I can start doing body work on it. So I'm going to go ahead and get this other fender bolted up, and we'll see where we get to. As you can see, I've got a little dip down that apron right there. I'm going to have to work that up, which was a part of the reason why I haven't painted under the hood yet, because I anticipated maybe there might be some kind of issue there. So if I can get the other fender to line up as decent as this one, I can start body work in this video. So let me get to that and see where we get. If they're not subscribed and it's free, it lets your sleeping place get nicer. You're really the star of the show? Are you? And I was working along looking for the bracket for the passenger side that bolts the cowl up here. As you can see, it's got a bolt and them little nut tabs. It's supposed to have this right here inside that fender. This right here is exactly why I ordered the master bolt kit for this car, because not one thing hasn't been hacked up. So bolts 100% necessary for this car. At least I know all the bolts go in it, all the bolts will snug up, everything will fit as far as, threading together. So in the long run, it's going to save you some money, it's going to save you some time, even though the initial cost was quite expensive. Well worth the money. If you're going through one of these cars like this one that's previously been hacked and got a bunch of mismatched fasteners, is to buy the correct bolt kits for your car. Sometimes they have a few extras here and there, but they save you a bunch. And to beat all, I don't know, you're probably not going to be able to see that, but it's a 10.9 grade, which means this is a metric bolt. And also, by doing their backwoods debauchery here, they have completely murdered that bow hole. So, hammer and dolly work to follow. Well, that took a little too much time for something simple. All because somebody couldn't do it right the first time. So, anybody curious? That's what it should do. That's the way it should look. Quite the mess. And yes, I know I put that in there with the paint was still wet. It's not gonna hurt anything. I just wanted something around them edges where I had to go in there and file and beat and grind and what have you to actually get that nut insert to fit, or stud insert, whatever you want to call it. The hackery on this car knows no bounds, so that's where we're at. You ever just had one of them days where you just don't feel like you got anything done so far? Today's one of them days. Day's over halfway gone. I've got both fenders on the car. Had to go in there and fix some hackery in the passenger side lower rocker panel where the bolt bolts up through. And trying to get these fenders kind of roughed into shape so I can actually even think about doing body work to them or even starting to block on them. So I'll flip around and I'll show you where I'm at. I need to stick the headlight bezels on it and kind of get an idea how they fit up here at the front. That way if I got to rough anything else in, I can. So this is about as good as a passenger side fender is going to fit. Like I said, remember it's super mega rough in this area. I got this one bent up so it matches with the cowl. Gonna need some major body work on the rear halves of these fenders. At least the body lines are pretty close on it. So let me get the headlight bezels put on here so I can see how they fit up against the fenders. Now that all the paint and bondo's off of them. Well, the metric bolt enemy has struck again, along with the wrong size bolts and bad fitting thing. So, not really surprised all that much at this point. Well, that tumble just killed our camera mount. So I'm gonna have to glue this plastic lovely piece back together. So give me a few and I'll be back, guys. Well, I was able to liberate the headlight buckets. It really needs a new set of those. They're all cracked and broken in places, but they'll work good enough for me to mock this stuff up, especially these headlight bezels, which still had the horrible red paint on it. You know, this beautiful show quality paint job that it had. But as I was taking this stuff apart, we got, you know, your typical mismatched metric fasteners and random hardware store screws and bolts and nuts and all that mess. But you can really see the gutter guard they put over this factory grill that had all the holes in it with all this off. So what a mess. So this is more fun stuff. Sometimes you feel like you're getting ahead and then you get further behind because, you know, one hack job of a car. The sad thing is, this car literally needs just about everything. Even the stuff that didn't look so bad before is going to look really bad by the time we get this car together. And it's not going to be by nothing I've done. It's just going to be the poor quality of it before, and what it is now is 10 different things. So let me get these headlight bezels on here, or headlight buckets, or whatever you're going to call them. That way I can get the bezels on there, and I can get all this stuff mocked up, and I'll show you how these fit up here at the front of the fenders. I can well assure you it's not good. And when I say stuff's not good, I mean there's hardly anything to mount this stuff on. I had to put a big old fender washer on that just to get it up there, but our top hole's gone over here and it's gone over on that side too. I got the bezels mocked up, and you can see this thing being murdered inside is not good for fitment up here. But the big things that are going to be issues here, and I tweaked around with the mounting and stuff, but you can see the quality right here of our fitment to these fenders, and it wasn't much better before, only because it was all one color. On this side we got a real big problem, and it's not necessarily this, but that fender's bent in a little bit right there. I don't know if you can see down in there. It's all bent up along this lip, but we are completely missing the body line off this bezel. I don't know if somebody's ground this off or what they've done, but they made quite the mess right here, because you see that there is no peak on this side. And you look down that fender and she's not good either. Right here we're way out while we're tied over here. So there is some slight adjustment in this stuff, but I've tweaked around on it here for a few minutes and I can't get it no better. So I guess I'm gonna go out here and get my headlight bezels for the 66. Put it on this, put them on and see how they fit on this car. It's gonna be a game of trying to figure out what fits, what don't fit. And it's just gonna be a mess, guys. Which the whole car was a mess from the beginning. Now the messes are really gonna start showing themselves, like I said before. So let me go grab my bezels. I'll stick it on here and see what we got on the passenger side. I may grab the driver's side too and stick on it to see. And all right, the headlight bezel off the 66. Fits a lot better. Almost all the way around. The difference is it has a little hump on it right there, so they definitely ground that off the other one. Obviously we still had to be body worked in, and had to be some bending done up on this flange. But this side, once again, fits loads better than the old one. This one may basically be a little, seem like smaller. So either way, when you deal with these old pot metal pieces, it's going to always be a mess, guys. So like I said, that's why it's important to mock this stuff up. This headlight housing over here is not helping this side situation at all. There's not really even enough to hardly bolt the bezel on this side. Whereas this side, there's plenty of stuff to bolt up to. But poor quality mess. I think I can at least work with these versus the other ones. And a little tweaking and a little bending around on the piece of pot metal here, and a little bending around on the fender. I've got it a lot better than what it was. Obviously, we still got a deal there with the fender line, and more than likely I'm gonna have to build something here out of, you know, some all metal or something to tie that together there. But this one fits a ton better around through here than the red one did. It don't fit great, but it fits a ton better. But let's see what we can do with the other side. I'll bring y'all along for that ride. We'll see if we can't tweak around on this one, or maybe even the red one, and see if we can't get it to fit better than this. So the likelihood that the headlight housing is causing most of these issues is probably fairly low to possible. Both headlight housings are complete garbage. The passenger side ones, I think, is salvageable. This driver side one's just not. So this is the part that's kind of hard for me to show, but here's a red headlight bezel, and we got some fitment issues along this lip. And as we can see, if you look down through this thing, it is not too straight. So pot metal, you have to be very gentle with it. It will break very easily. So what I like to do is take something like this hand seamer and just kind of lightly try to, I'm not pulling hard, I'm just lightly trying to flex this thing around just a touch to try to get this line back straight. So let me flip this up to the car and let me see what I got. The top seam looks pretty good, but around this fender, I'm just going to take and lightly work it with body hammer. You cannot hit this stuff hard. I'm just barely. This stuff is very thin and very brittle. So you have to treat it with respect. And if you don't, you will have a problem either by breaking it, or you can crack it. So you can lightly work this stuff like this. It's not going to move a great amount, but let me show you what difference just that little bit made. So that little bit made a world of difference here. Once again, just like the other side, we get a little bit there, but we're pretty good around the edge. And me working at the edge brought that out quite a bit. There's still a little lip there, but it is a ton better. Like I said before, this headlight bucket is hot garbage. It's all bent up and broke up, and you know, we got that still to deal with. So I'm gonna price a new headlight bucket, if not a pair of them, for this car. That way I can get this stuff fitted 100%, but they already look 100% better than they did before. And we don't done nothing but some bending around on it to make them fit the fenders. And I was out there looking at the 66, and I noticed this body line kind of rolls off onto the fender itself, and it's actually rounded right here. Let's see. So what I've been doing, I've been taking a little flat-ended punch and just working this area right here to a rounded shape like the headlight bezel. It does have just a slight bump up right there, but it's mostly rounded. Where these Chiwan repop fenders come out to a sharp point at the very tip right here. You can see the difference right there. And right here. It's nice to have another car to compare to. So, because when you're doing this, you have no idea if it's the panel you worked on is wrong, the part you got's wrong, the replacement part you got may be wrong. It's nice to have a car that's got factory metal so you can compare some of these body lines. Like I said, that's easy enough to address up here from the fenders. We're pre-bodywork phase on the fenders. So I'm just going to take my flat-ended punch and I'm going to work that pointed tip to a rounded edge right there. And that actually makes things a lot easier at this point. So, car's been a godsend to have out there because it's given me lots of good comparison points and a lot of good measurement points so far. I hate to start robbing pieces off of it for this car because I offered it to him from the get-go. It's kind of an exchange parts deal and he wasn't interested. But we're down to crunch time as far as paint goes. We got about 45 days of decent weather here left. This car's got to get in color. Unless it's going to sit here all winter and half the spring. So, let me get back to it. I'll show you how I'm going to work the driver's side fender down after I work the passenger side one. I was just trying something. It worked pretty well, so I'll do it on the driver's side. And after that point, like I said, I'm going to have to find a headlight bucket for this driver's side. And to be honest, I'd rather put one on the passenger side too because they're poor. They're very bad. The only good thing about the fender extensions, especially the headlight bucket extensions, one screw of them goes in the fender, so I at least know that's a constant variable. So let me work this down and we'll see where we get. I went ahead and run over his fender with a block. Now you can really see how wavy this fender is. So, like I said, I just kind of lightly run over it with a block just to show y'all kind of where it was at. So, I'm about ready to start body working on this fender, which means I'm going to run a piece of tape down that door and across the cowl. I'm going to take this headlight bucket back off. That way I can fit it as needed. But we're about ready to skim coat this fender. Then we'll start blocking it. We'll see where we end up at. So I know this video is probably not as exciting as most, but maybe there's some stuff in there to help you out in the future. I appreciate it if everybody would hit that like button on this video, share it with your friends, and most importantly, if you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button. I've been trying to help him out on labor hours on this by making these videos. And one way you can help with the project is hit that subscribe button. It's absolutely free, don't cost you anything, but it allows me to take a little more labor off his bill. If you are a subscriber, I greatly appreciate you guys. So, at this point, it's late in the day. I'm going to call it a day. I'm going to come in here in the morning. We're going to start body working on the passenger side fender. And then we'll move on as we need to. And alright, it's the next day. So I went in here and done my initial fill on this rough antenna hole with some all metal. Some of that aluminum reinforced filler. That stuff's good for anywhere you have to fill that may actually have to be thick or isn't a structural or a area that needs to be stiffened up. So I put a little all metal here where I weld this edge up and where that gobbed up antenna hole I had before was. Not a real thick fill right there, but we had that little divot where that old antenna plate was, where I welded it up, so I just put a little all metal in there. we're ready to skim the whole fender with our 3M gold. I'll probably do that in sections. I'll probably do top and then the raised area here and then the lower halves. Alright, a lot of people just went ahead and skim coated the whole fender. What I done, I just skim coat. I'm going to do it one section at a time. The reason I'm going to do that, it'll let me work this in the time frame that I want to. So, got that skim coated. I'm fixing to run over it with some 40 grit to rough it in. And I'll follow back with a light guide coat and then hit it with some 80 and see what we got. We'll go from there. I worked it down until I started seeing a little bit of metal. I re-guide coated it, hit it here a few places. I'm going to go back in here. I'm going to tap some of these high spots down just a touch. Work them down just a little bit. I'm going to re-skim coat some of these dark areas. Like right here. Right here. This area cleans up pretty well. I'm going to have to do some hammer work. And when I say go in here and address these areas, I'm just going to lightly tap them with this pointed body hammer around the edges and work towards the center. But doing it this way is one way to make sure you get a good straight panel in the end. And we all seen what that fender looked like before. It was about like this one, which is hard to see, but it's very rough too. I wasn't going to spend a lot of time pounding dents out of this. These are the cheapest Taiwanese fenders you can get. They need to be replaced, so we're just going to have to probably put a little bit more filler than I want to in them, but we'll try to straighten them up best we can. So regardless, there's not going to be a lot in it, even skim coating it this way, because you see about 95% of it back out. What it is good for is making sure your panel's good and straight. If it just had one or two dents, I would have went in there and just fixed them one or two dents. But like the rest of the car, it's been a mess. So pretty much having to skim coat the whole panel and then work it down from there. Waste a bunch of filler, waste a bunch of paper, but in the end it makes for a nicer product. And alright, I got this fender roughly roughed in here. It feels pretty good. You always want to use your hand in addition to the blocks to kind of feel what you got going on. You'll feel any humps or low spots with your hand. You can tell which way this curve is supposed to feel in this area. Now, I did have to go back in here again and lower this some more, and I'll have to go in here with that grinder and clean this up. But real persistent place right here. This antenna was flopping in this fender before. I went in here and added that reinforcement plate to try to stiffen it up right here. We still had a little hump in this area. I've actually worked it all in here, down. I'm gonna skim coat this one more time. I got a little low spot right here where we had that dent. But other than that, top of the fender's looking pretty good, and it'll be time to move on to the side. So guys, you just can't be afraid to go back in there and do some tapping and, you know, work some of these areas down. If it had been a small spot, I'd used a little fine tip punch and went in there and just worked it around. I knew it was going to be screwed up around this antenna hole because this whole back half of this fender was screwed before. Which, if you remember, what all I found in the back corner of it back here, and then the antenna just loosely flopping around on this fender, warping all that metal the whole time. And the rest of the top of it's elbow dents from people leaning on the fender, working on the car, and that's going to be a concern for the rest of its life, especially with these thin sheet fenders. Buy thick metal, guys. If you're going to replace metal, buy the thickest metal you can buy. Alright, get the upper half of this fender blocked down as far as I can take it. Like I said, I like to try to, when I'm skim coating, I want it kind of translucent. I want to leave a glob of Bondo in there. A lot of people would just smear that and build it up until all they seen was filler. So I work it down until we get to that point where it's almost translucent, just enough to kind of straighten up that panel. So I'm going to spray a little Transtar primer on this section, and then we'll move down to the rear half of the fender on the bottom. I started the lower skim, the skimmed lower half of the fender at this point. Once it sits up a little bit, I'm going to knock it off and go back in there and address as I need. I know it's not a lot of fun stuff to watch in this video, but it's just how it goes sometimes. So, got like 45 days for the weather starts to turn, so I've got to hustle down, get this thing ready for paint. Side fender roughed in, especially that lower half. There's quite a bit of work had to be done on the bottom down there. Body line, while not perfect, looks pretty decent. Looks pretty good looking down this way. It's hard to tell with that Transtar primer because you get some kind of tiger striping from spray bomb, but it feels good and smooth. Looks pretty decent. Definitely gonna have to get some new headlight buckets so I can fit those extensions and what we're gonna do down here in the front. I need to get that piece ordered. That way I can get it fitted up with the bottom half of these fenders. Well guys, that's about it for this video. It's about all I can do in a 40 to 45 minute time frame. So me and Daisy's going to continue working on this Mustang, and if you haven't yet, make sure you hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and most importantly, if you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button because it does help the channel to grow and it helps me knock a little bit off his labor bill. So if you are a subscriber, I greatly appreciate you guys, and I look forward to your comments below, and I'll see y'all at the next video. Thanks for watching.